Hi class, it's Dr. Lindner. We are still talking about tissues. In a previous video, we spoke about epithelial tissue. We know that it's a bunch of closely packed cells with very little extracellular matrix. We know that it lines cavities and it's a lining and a covering type of tissue, in comparison to connective tissue, where it's a bunch of cells spaced widely apart with lots of extracellular matrix and proteins and ground substance. And we know that there's connective tissue proper. We know that there's supporting connective tissue. And we know that there's fluid connective tissue with many subcategories. Now, muscle tissue, a little bit easier because there's only three types. So there's skeletal muscle, there's cardiac muscle, and smooth muscle. Skeletal muscle is easy to know where we're going to find it because it attaches to the skeleton. And it's voluntary. You can consciously and voluntarily control your skeletal muscles. If you want your fingers to move, you can consciously contract your flexor digiti minimi or flexor digitorum longus or flexor digitorum profundus and superficialis muscles. If you want to flex your elbow, your biceps brachii can voluntarily contract. So skeletal muscle is voluntary. Cardiac, well, it's in the name. It refers to the heart. It's involuntary. You can't consciously and voluntarily increase your heart rate on demand from 72 beats per minute to 90 within a second, right? Maybe involuntarily when you get scared or something, but you can't consciously voluntarily do that. Smooth muscle is found around blood vessels, and it's found around organs, and it's involuntary. When I think of a woman's uterus, that's smooth muscle. When we think of the muscle of the stomach and the muscles of the intestines and the esophagus, these are involuntary muscles. When we think of muscles around your blood vessels, here's a cross section of a blood vessel. Here's another cross section of a blood vessel. This is constricted, this is dilated. So here, your blood pressure is high because blood is traveling through this narrow lumen, and here, the blood pressure is much lower because we have a much wider diameter lumen for blood to flow through. So we call this vasoconstriction or vasodilation. Okay? So when we look at skeletal muscle is known as striated, but so is cardiac muscle. They're both known to be striated. The difference when we look at the description, these have obvious striations. They're multinucleated cells. They're cylindrical, but look how parallel everything is. But when we look at heart, we can see that it's branched and it's uninucleated, one nucleus. We also see these intercalated discs with cardiac. We do not see these intercalated discs anywhere in skeletal muscle. So what are these intercalated discs? These intercalated discs are the unions between this heart cell and this heart cell. They make the junctions. They make what we call gap junctions. And gap junctions are used for fast, rapid forms of communication so that both atrium contract at the same time and then both ventricles contract at the same time. These cells all have to communicate at lightning speed. Otherwise, each heart cell would be in chaos. You get the right atrium that contracts and then the left atrium that contracts. We don't want them contracting at different times. These need to contract at the same time, and then the ventricles need to contract at the same time. Thank goodness for these intercalated discs. So skeletal muscle, these are voluntary, they're striated, they're multinucleated, they have the ability of attaching to bones and moving them. Whereas cardiac muscle is highly branched, they're uninucleated, they have intercalated discs, and they're not voluntary. They're involuntary. When we look at smooth muscle, these are spindle shaped. They have central nuclei, right? You can see them, these centrally located nuclei. There's no striations, none. So because there's no striations that we have in cardiac and skeletal, skeletal and cardiac are striated. Because they lack striations, we call it smooth muscle. So these are found throughout the digestive tract, and they're found in the urinary tract. They're involuntary. They're found mostly in the walls of the organs that are hollowed, hollow organs. Okay, stomach, small intestine, large intestine, uterus. Okay, so those are the three types of muscle. Okay, we'll pause there. When I come back, we'll talk about the neuron.